Ah, yes, the jingle bells. The jingle bells trying to cheer me up. Welcome back to United View, guys. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're watching this, wherever you're watching this around the world. Yes, we're here to talk about Manchester United World Cup. I don't even want to talk about it. My voice is still shaky after screaming yesterday with Harry Kane missing that penalty. Oh, gosh. England, quarterfinals, World Cup, elimination. I think I've heard that story before, but we're not talking about England today. We're not talking about the World Cup. We're talking about the club that we're here to discuss. We're going to talk about Manchester United. We're going to be talking about a striker search. We're going to talk about a striker search for Manchester United, a striker hunt. Erik ten Hag, a couple of targets. Erik ten Hag has spoken about it. We're going to talk about potential bid for Gvardiol, of course, Croatian centre-back, which is getting rave reviews at this past World Cup. So we're going to be talking about a possible bid for him. We're going to be talking about some contracts as well, with obviously Rashford, Dalot, etc. All their contracts expiring at the end of the season. Got a bit of an update on that. Erik ten Hag giving some more information on that. He's also praised Anthony Martial as well after the two mid-season friendly games in Spain. 2 defeats as well. That game yesterday was pretty poor, wasn't it? But before we get into anything, of course, guys, be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner. And before we get into any news that we're going to discuss today, as always, this show is brought to you by Fresh Ego Kid. Fresh Ego FC will be, for the third year, facilitating their annual Community Giveback, the campaign for change to provide an essential hamper and gifts to families from low-income, vulnerable and at-risk families. This year, Fresh Ego FC is partnering with Anthony Joshua's charity Clean Herts Community. This year, especially with global inflation and fuel poverty, those families, along with other families, will struggle to provide the basics this Christmas. Last year, through donations, Fresh Ego FC was able to give back to 120 families. This year, they expect to be supporting more than 350 families. Of course, as we get closer and closer to Christmas and the holiday period, a really important cause. As always, for a bit more information, here's a message from Anthony Joshua.
Morning, people, I hope you're good. So the festive period is fast approaching, and what I've come to realise is that a lot of people are actually unsure on how to kind of connect with communities and give back. So what I've done is my organisation has teamed up with another organisation to do some projects where we're going to be doing community work and spending time in communities and doing some give back projects, right? So we want to raise some funds, we want to get some items because it's going to be rolled out across the whole year as well. This ain't just a one-stop shop. So if you want to get involved, follow the link, follow the Instagram page, the social pages for more info, and your help will be appreciated. We'll be there, I'll be there. It'll be a big community day. Don't worry about that, Leaf. And yeah, we appreciate your support fully, yeah? God bless, be safe, and I'll catch up with you all soon.
Words from AJ there, and as always, guys, if you do want to get involved, if you do want to donate, if you want to find out more information, all of the info is in the video description, including a link to donate to a Just Giving page or an email address if you want to find out more, if you want to get involved, all the info in the video description, as I mentioned, well-worthy cause. Now, let's get on to this news today. Let's talk about the striker search because we're getting closer and closer to the conclusion of the World Cup in Qatar, which means a return to reality, a return to normality for Manchester United and the Manchester United fans, the Manchester United players and the Manchester United scouting department who are looking at options for a striker to replace Cristiano Ronaldo or at the very least plug that hole until the summer, when you would think we'll go big looking for a number 9, a long-term number 9 option. Now, it's being reported this morning that Manchester United manager Erik ten Hag likes fellow Dutchman Cody Gakpo as well as Benfica's 21-year-old frontman Gonçalo Ramos. This is coming from Simon Stone from the BBC, so of course very reputable outlets there. But it continues, it's not only Simon Stone that's actually reporting United's interest in the Portuguese forward because it's also being reported by Samuel Luckhurst of the Manchester Evening News today that Erik ten Hag is believed to be an admirer of Benfica and Portugal forward Gonçalo Ramos. Now, when asked ten Hag, he's been doing some media interviews, of course, the last few days, with United being on that mid-season warm weather training camp, having those friendlies, having the interviews, talking about Ronaldo and talking about other things. He was asked if Manchester United are looking for a striker in January. Now, Ten Hag's response was actually quite interesting, saying, quote, "Yes, but only when we find the right player. We will do everything in our power. We are doing research at every opportunity, and we will do everything we can if that opportunity is there." Now, obviously, that's the same thing he really said in the summer. We signed how many players in the summer? Was it 5, 6? And at every point that Erik ten Hag was asked during the preseason tour, after the preseason tour, once the season had started, he was constantly asked, well, What's going on with transfers? You've brought a lot of people in, a lot of people have left. What's the situation with transfers? Frankie de Jong, Anthony, etc. And he was asked every single time, it has to be the right player. It has to be the right player. We're not looking for every players, we're looking for the right players. And he's saying the same thing here. Now, make no mistake, Manchester United are absolutely looking for a striking option in January. As I've said a million times, we were light with Cristiano Ronaldo. Eric Ten Hag's gone on record saying he wanted to keep Ronaldo, or he wanted Ronaldo to play a part this season. Once Ronaldo did the interview, every single person at the club, whether it was him, whether it was John Murto, whether it was Richard Arnold, whether it was whoever, all decided he has to go. Therefore, we were light with him, we're even lighter without him. So we have to get some kind of striking option, some kind of attacking option in January. It must be. Despite the financial situation at the club at the moment, they have to do something in January, because if they do not, the pursuit of top four becomes really difficult. And make no mistake, we're in that race for the top four. Heading into the season, I think some United fans might not have thought that we would be, especially with what happened last season, with the departures and with the chaos surrounding the club. There was a feeling, at least with myself, and I remember talking to Flex about it, saying it might be a season where once again we're fifth or we're sixth. And we've just got to kind of own that and hope that it gets better. But the way the season's played out so far, and I do think this World Cup, the hangover, if you will, from the World Cup is going to play a major factor into how this season concludes. But the point being is that we're massively in that race for top four. That we could absolutely get a third or a fourth this season. And I know people will roll their eyes and go, Manchester United settling for third or fourth, but given where we were last season, I'll take it, because it's the next step, it's the next building block for Eric Ten Hag. And we have no idea what Manchester United is going to look like in terms of an infrastructure, in terms of ownership come the summer. So if we can get off on the right foot for whoever those new owners are by being in the Champions League and then possibly spending big in the summer on the right players, we can really take some real progressive steps forward as a club. So the point being is, if we don't get that striking option in January, all of that I've just spoken about immediately becomes quite difficult. Now, one name, as I mentioned, that has been linked to United, even prior to the World Cup starting, going as far back as the summer. At one point, it was rumoured that there were discussions, and the feeling was that he was going to go to United, but it didn't happen in the end because the price escalated for Anthony. He then turned down moves to Southampton and Leeds United, that being Cody Gakpo. Now, Gakpo, of course, has had a fantastic World Cup for the Netherlands, scoring multiple goals, getting assists. The Netherlands are now out after losing to Argentina. And Eric Ten Hag was asked about the Dutch forward, and he said, quote, "I cannot give comments on specific players. I will never do that. Players have contracts, and I respect that, but be sure we are working in the background to get the right players in." Now, again, having seen how Eric Ten Hag operates now for about 6 months or so, having seen how he operates in a transfer window, it shouldn't come as much surprise that he basically says, I'm not going to talk about it, and I'm not going to talk about individual players. The press was desperate, absolutely desperate in the summer to get him to comment on Frankie de Jong. They peppered him with questions, and he just never responded. He plays for Barcelona. We're not just looking for players, we're looking for the right players. So it's no surprise that he doesn't comment on Cody Gakpo. But as he says there, we are working in the background to get the right players in. And I do believe, I really do, that we will get one player in January. I do think we'll get that striking option in January. I don't know who that is. And make no mistake, my trust, and this is the concern, isn't it? With everything that is going on in the background, with the ownership, with the financial situation being what it is. I mean, those numbers do speak for themselves when they came out the other day, with, was it 24 million cash balance currently, with the 2.5 million pre-tax loss. That's including after the deduction of Champions League, failure to qualify for the Champions League. Financially, the club isn't in the strongest position that it has been. And it now makes sense, doesn't it? Why the intention initially was to have Ronaldo until the summer and then go again, because they didn't want to do anything in January because fiscally it's quite difficult to do so. But they've been pushed, they've been forced, Ronaldo's gone and they have to replace him. So I do believe that United will get a striker in January, or a striking option, an attacking option. I don't think we're going to get that long-term number 9. I do think that comes in the summer, but I think we are going to go after that attacking option. And my feeling is, and this is not me having insider sources, I'm not here providing scoops or anything like that, My feeling is that United would like that to be Cody Gakpo because he can play on the left, because he can play on the right, he can play in a number 10, and he can play up front. People can say, well, he's not a striker. True. He's not a striker traditionally. Traditionally, he plays off the left for PSV. I know we've got a lot of left-sided wingers, but if you do watch or had watched the Netherlands play in this World Cup, he did play up front. He played in a 2 with Memphis Depay. He played in a 10. When he played in the 2 with Memphis, sometimes he played out on the right-hand side. And in that game against Argentina, when Louis van Gaal was substituting pretty much every single attacker off the pitch to put on Luke de Jong, to put on Wout Weghorst, Cody Gakpo was the one he left on, because he believed Cody Gakpo could be the difference. And I think there needs to be something said about the fluidity that Erik ten Hag wants. Of course, long term, he wants that clear number 9 who the midfielders, the wingers, the number 10 can play off of and can play with his back to goal, akin to Anthony Martial. And maybe that's not Cody Gakpo now, but you have to look at who's available. You have to look at who's possible in January. And Cody Gakpo feels like he would be possible. Now, according to The Athletic, they're suggesting that for United to make an approach for a striker in January, there are 2 conditions. The player must be absolutely improve the team and must also be affordable. And that's the key thing there, affordability. Because when we talk about Gonzalo Ramos, and I'm not going to just skate over that one because he is being spoken about now, United are interested. And at the same time, he did score a hat-trick for Portugal and people went, 21, striker, long-term. His record for Benfica is pretty good. It's nearly a goal every 2 games. There might be something there, and there might be something there. But at the same time, the Manchester Evening News is also reporting that Benfica have no intention of selling Gonzalo Ramos, who is reportedly liked by Erik ten Hag, for anything less than his £103 million release clause. And this is something I was touching on during one of the match views the other day. It might have been the Portugal match view with Morocco, that Gonzalo Ramos could absolutely be an option. Come the summer, again, I've just said, he does fit a lot of tick boxes there. He's big, he's strong, he's young. So if he does come to United and it pays off, you've got a striker there for a decade or even longer. He does fit that kind of larger frame striker, that more target man figure that I think Ten Hag would be looking for. He very rarely gets injured. There's something there, but that's not a January signing. That's a summer signing. Why on earth would Benfica let their striker go in January for anything less than a release clause? And Manchester United, they ain't got 103 million to be purchasing Gonzalo Ramos. That's why the discussion about João Felix, I think, is quite humorous, because Atletico Madrid purchased him for what? 110, 120 million euros, and they're looking for like 130, something like that. United aren't paying that. They don't have that to spend in January. What they do have, possibly, is 50 million quid for Cody Gakpo, which is considerably more than we were offered him for in the summer. But that's what happens when you let things escalate in the summer with Anthony, and you decided you couldn't afford Gakpo then. Now you got to pay up. World Cup tax. So Gonzalo Ramos is something I think United could revisit come the summer again. The ownership situation by then might be a lot different. And maybe that might be the long-term option. Some other people might say Osimhen, some other people might say some other names. We'll have to wait and see. But I think Gonzalo Ramos might be in that conversation. Also, at the same time, you do have to be cautious. He is young. Yes, he got a hat-trick in that game against Switzerland. But also, it's one game at a World Cup against a Switzerland side that really under-delivered that day. And you would have to keep an eye out on him, I think, for the remainder of the season. But look, Benfica, they're no joke when it comes to finding gems, developing them, and selling them on for major profits. I think, isn't it something like they're the club that in the last decade, 15 years, have made the most money in terms of selling players? It's like £1 billion or something, with the amount of players they've sold. Think of the players that have come from there, whether it is Edison, whether it is João Felix, and possibly now in the future, Gonzalo Ramos. So that's someone to look out for, I think, in the summer, but come January, not so much. I think it will still be Cody Gakpo, but at the same time, there will be other clubs interested. Arsenal are looking for someone to shore up their attacking options now that Gabriel Jesus is out for 3 months. In addition to that, they're competing for a title, so they're looking for players anyway. Chelsea, of course, they're going to be looking for options. They spent big in the summer. They'll spend big again in January. And obviously clubs around Europe as well. Bayern Munich, Real Madrid. The point being that the World Cup puts everyone on the market, and those big clubs, they're all interested. And I don't think it's a one-horse race for Cody Gakpo, and that does concern me as well. Now, just shifting this slightly away from the striking situation, a weird story just coming out just before I started recording this from Sebastian Dennis and from Santi Aruna from, again, based out, it would appear in France and obviously out in Spain as well, suggesting that Manchester United have made a 95 million euro offer for Gvardiol, the centre-back from Croatia. Now, the report also just suggests that Manchester City have offered 100 million euros plus add-ons, and Chelsea have offered 90 million euros. I mean, I can't lie here. I think this is nonsense. I really, really do. I think that where this would come from United, I have no idea. Now, if you told me that Manchester City had offered 100 million, if the report just said, oh, Manchester City have offered 100 million euros plus add-ons and Chelsea have offered 90 million euros, I'd go, well, yeah. I mean, Chelsea have been linked to Gvardiol for a long time. Manchester City, you know, very rarely do they go up to that 100 million number. They did it with Grealish. Usually when they purchase a player, it's around 50, 60. But, you know, Gvardiol clearly is a real quality talent. He's still only 20 years of age. The World Cup, he's been immense. He's been a rock at the back of the Croatian defence. And I do think he'll get a big move. Maybe that will be in January. Maybe that'll be in the summer. But for United at the moment, I'd love it if we signed Gvardiol in January. But I just, given this financial situation, given that it does feel like, again, we're signing one player, that's a replacement figure for Ronaldo in January. Where Gvardiol that would come out from, I don't know. It would obviously massively improve our defence. You'd have Martinez, Varane, and then Gvardiol, have people then back up like Lindelof as well. And you go, oh, great. And what would that mean for Harry Maguire? Probably he'd be on the way out. But at the same time, I don't want to spend too much on this story because I think it's nonsense. Again, I look at the financial figures that were coming out, cash balance of 24 million, the pre-tax loss. And I mean, again, the Glazers aren't taking dividends out of the club. Like that just goes to show the financial situation in what's going on at United at the moment. So to suddenly, find 95 million euros to buy Gvardiol, I rate the ambition, but I don't rate the reliability in this one, unfortunately. Now, let's move on and talk about some out-of-contract players. Of course, we've got quite a few. Marcus Rashford, Diogo Dalot, David De Gea, and a lot of people wondering what's going on with them. Now, obviously, it's not too much of a concern because United do have optional years on all of their contracts, so United most likely will trigger all of those options. And Erik ten Hag was asked about this. Obviously, now we're coming out of the World Cup, now that we're heading towards January, and if you don't activate those options, clubs from around Europe can start to talk to him and can get pre-contract negotiations and deals. They can be finalised. Now, Ten Hag, when asked about these out-contract players, said, quote, "We are talking to them to extend their contracts, but we have control because we have an option on all the players and we will exercise those options." So basically what he's saying there is that the likes of Marcus Rashford, the likes of Diogo Dalot, those options are going to be triggered. That we're not going to get into any situation come January where it's like, Marcus Rashford's agreed a pre-contract with PSG. I know the PSG president was out the other day saying, oh, for free in the summer. No, that's not going to happen. I think what most likely is going to happen here is that optional year is going to be activated, extended. Negotiations for new deals will probably most likely begin once they get back, most likely. So once they get back in and once we head into January, with their contracts being activated for another year, the discussions will begin. And I then wouldn't be surprised if come the end of the season, because these things do take time. I always point out Bruno Fernandes last year or earlier this year, whenever it was. It feels everything blurs into one at the moment. But negotiations started with Bruno in July. And when did they get finished? Really, really late on, like 9 months later, something like that. So I would suggest, and I would speculate, and it's just speculation, but I would think that the contracts, they get triggered for an extra year. Rashford, Dalot, the negotiations then begin, probably June or July, maybe even August. It's announced they've signed new contracts. They're staying for 4 or 5 years on improved terms. I think that's most likely the situation. But the positive there is, of course, that Erik ten Hag is firmly in control of that situation. The report previously was put out there that Ten Hag had said to Manchester United, put a stop on all contract negotiations. I'm deciding them. I'm deciding when they're going to get their new deals. I'm deciding when we're going to start negotiating. I'm deciding when we're going to trigger these extra years on their deals. And on top of that, it has to be performance related. If they're not performing, we're letting them go. That helps us. Now, just because he says we've got the advantage there and we're going to trigger the options. That doesn't necessarily mean he's going to trigger them on every single contract. The likes of David De Gea, I think that one's still a bit of an open book. I don't think Erik ten Hag has decided what he wants to do, because if we trigger that option, that's what, 350k a week? It's a lot of money. And I think Ten Hag might say, maybe we leave that one. Maybe we negotiate with David a new deal on lesser terms, or we just decide, look, that's too much and we've got to look in a different direction. And we'll have to wait and see what happens with that one. Same with Fred. Fred's contract expires. Maybe he might just go, look, I don't want to trigger that extension with that one. It might just be easier just to let that one run until the summer. And again, make a decision later on. Fred might go elsewhere. We might get a new midfielder in the summer. And again, it's all very difficult because we don't know financially what we're looking like in the summer. And that's really why that whole takeover process does need to be done by the spring. And it was reported by Simon Stone previously, hopefully by the spring. If that is done by the spring, then you can have discussions with the new owners. Okay, what's available for me in terms of a transfer budget? You know, how much money have we got? Who are we looking at? What's the ambition? So all of that, again, does kind of hinge on this whole uncertainty surrounding United's future. And again, we'll have to wait and see what happens with that too. Finally, I just want to touch on Ten Hag's comments on Anthony Martial, because of course Martial did play both the games, not the entire 90 minutes in both of them, but he did play against Cadiz and Betis as he builds up his fitness and hopefully, fingers crossed, can remain fit for the majority of the remainder of the season. I wouldn't go too far. I mean, we've been hurt before when it comes to that. But he said, Ten Hag, quote, "The first challenge is for him, Martial, to be available and fit, which he has to be responsible for. But we have to support him in all the ways we can. We have seen that when he is available, he has a massive impact on our game. He has 350 minutes in the entirety of this season, which is ridiculous. 350 minutes, 4 goals and 2 assists. That's a really good record. And it is true. we kind of joked about it here, haven't we, guys? That when Martial has played, and he hasn't played 90 minutes this season, but when he's played and he's come on, he's either scored or got an assist. That is wild. Now, can that be maintained? I would probably think logically no. But I think given what's happened to him so far this season in terms of an injury record, I expect him to get injured again at some point. It's inevitable. That's why we need another striker. And also, if we're going to manage someone that historically does have a fitness issue, he can't play every game. We have to manage that. He has to be on an individual regime, which I would assume he is at this point. And you need to support him, as Ten Hag is saying, by managing that. Managing his history, managing his fitness, managing his training, whether it means he can't be out on the pitch training-wise all the time, whether it's a Ledley King settings, I don't know. But either way, as Ten Hag says, it's on him. He has to be responsible for, which is quite an interesting comment there, actually, suggesting that maybe some of those injuries might be sort of Martial to blame. I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into that one. Or maybe he's not taking as best care of himself as he could. That's, again, speculation on my part. But also, as Ten Hag says, it's also about the club supporting to ensure that he remains fit the majority of the time and ensure that he stays on the pitch the majority of the time, because that's the most important thing. So there you go, guys. A bit of a Manchester United news update for you today. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about the striker hunt, Gakpo, Gonzalo Ramos. What their thoughts on the Gvardiol bids, out of contracts? Which deals would you trigger? Would you trigger Marcus Rashford, Diogo Dalot? Would you trigger Fred? Would you trigger David De Gea? What kind of wages do you think they should be on? And what do you think is the plan for Anthony Martial going forward? I'd love to hear your comments in the comment section below. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe, bottom right-hand corner as well. The World Cup match views are continuing once the semi-finals begin. I believe that's Tuesday and Wednesday, so I'll be back for them as well. I'll also be back with plenty of Manchester United news as it breaks, as it develops. But between now and then, I'll speak for you again very soon. Peace.